And now from art to agents, we're shifting the gears to AI autonomy. AI agents are pushing us to rethink how businesses operate and innovate. But how can we design agentic systems for safety, security, and trust? To tackle these questions and more, please welcome to the stage Google Asia Pacific Vice President for Southeast Asia and South Asia Frontier, Sapna Chadha, Accenture Asia Pacific and AI Data Lead, Vivek Luthra, and Fortune's Jeremy Khan.
Great, thanks for joining us. Sapna, just to start out, I think we should define terms. You know, this idea of AI agents gets thrown around a lot. What do we really mean when we talk about AI agents?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think a good place to start. I mean, AI agents are where you take intelligent language models and you give them access, and they have access to tools that allow you to do more than just independent tasks, right? I think today we're very much used to using AI for independent tasks, one task at a time. But this allows you to use tools to really stitch things together, which become complex and multitask oriented.
So it's taking action, sometimes multi-step actions on behalf of a user. Vivek, you know, what sort of use cases, with Accenture, you've got a good view across lots of industries. What kind of use cases are you seeing, you know, both with clients, maybe you're also using agents within Accenture itself. You know, where are people using these, and are they finding real ROI from the use of agents?
Thanks, Jeremy. Quite a few, actually. Accenture by itself, for example, we've been deploying agents within Accenture corporate function across areas like HR, finance, marketing, technology. And today, our workforce actually uses that with a material unlocking of value. If we look at the industry, we just finished, Jeremy, interestingly, a report called Front Runners. And Front Runners, we found we kind of you know, met with about 2,000 executives across the industries from different parts of the industry. We found that there are about 8% of these companies who really scaled up AI. So what companies are finding is that, I think it's very high on the agenda, but companies are kind of figuring out ways to be able to scale AI. Areas include what we call as strategic bets. If you think about life sciences, you know, for example, time to approval is one area where a lot of life sciences companies have invested a lot of efforts in using an AI-first solution. If you think about insurance and banking, fraud management, for example, is a pretty big thing. These are the things which are part of the core value chain, and we see a lot of value being unlocked using what we call as strategic bets. And then this other area is what we call table stakes. Table stakes are almost like a must operate. Today, areas like marketing operations, customer contact center, technology life cycles, our clients across industries are today deploying AI solutions into these areas.
Got it. You know, within Accenture, can you give us like a specific area where you're using an agent to do something and how that works?
Sure. In fact, our chief marketing officer has actually been talking a lot about in marketing as an example. As I spoke about, you know, we have ourselves reinvented Accenture as customer zero for our own. So for example, our marketing teams actually use for campaign management, use actually an AI solution, which has materially reduced the time taken to do the same amount of work, which was being done without agents in the past. That's kind of crunched the cycle times, has really allowed our teams to focus on things which are more value additive within the marketing function. That would be a great example of where we've already implemented and scaled it up across Accenture internally.
Got it. Sapna, within Google, are you seeing agents as primarily something that you're sort of pushing out through your consumer-facing applications or through sort of the more enterprise applications that Google works on?
Well, I'd say both. Yeah. Typically, as Google, we always say it's both. I mean, we believe that agents can help to make things more helpful, more personal, more proactive, right? So you'll see that laid out in some of our consumer products for sure. But on the enterprise side, what we're seeing is that almost 33% of all enterprise software by 2028 will have agentic AI built into it, and that will automate almost 15% of day-to-day work and workflows. So it's an exciting time in the enterprise space, but also in our recent I/O developer conference, we shared a concept of what we're calling Project Astra. It's a vision for the future in terms of a universal AI agent. I mean, imagine you have a bike that's broken, you take your camera, and you have a conversation with your phone asking questions about what's broken, where to get something to get fixed, how to be able to procure something, and it all happens seamlessly because it's using vision, it's using speech, it's using actions, and it's bringing up a manual that will help you solve. It's sending a phone call to a shop to help you procure something, and so it's all doing this seamlessly. And I think we think that this thing is the future, but it's actually happening now, right? We have live demos, live products that are actually in the space on the consumer side. I will say on the enterprise side, which is also quite interesting in the work that we're doing, is we believe our role is to obviously build this stuff ourselves, but also to help others do it. And in that lens, we have developed an agent development toolkit, which we've put out into the world. It includes things like pre-built agents, because I think there's certain things that can be shipped at faster speed. Pre-built agents for customer service, pre-built agents for commerce, right? And so those pre-built agents are part of our agent development toolkit, which we're aiming to help the ecosystem. The last thing I would say is security and safety, right? I think thoughtfully doing this is very important. And so we just released a white paper on secure AI agent practices, right? I think the landscape is moving so fast, and we see our role as helping.
I definitely want to get to security in a minute. Vivek, I want to ask, in the use cases you're seeing, is it primarily agents, is it still kind of human-in-the-loop systems, and is it being used primarily to sort of augment human workers, or are you seeing with some of the automation that you're replacing entire chains of human workers, and you're really moving more towards an automation rather than augmentation?
That's a great question, Jeremy. So in terms of how we are seeing our clients kind of adopt AI in the life cycle, we kind of clearly see 3 stages. The first one, we call it as AI assist. So think about when you have a problem in your team, you go to your best person in the team who you know can really solve it for you, help you solve that thing. So AI assist is really the first stage. So when you're using forms of it would be co-pilots, you use it in the way you work every day. So that's really where most of the businesses start adopting AI solutions. I think the second part is AI as an advisor. So I think as we start to, how do you kind of increase the overall capability of everyone if you could use AI solutions to be able to advise so the humans in the loop can make the right decisions? I think that's the second stage, right? And third and the last stage is around automation or autonomous, which is where you can take parts of value chain and agents could actually do an end-to-end complete work or work products as it is designed. So these are the 3 stages. Mostly we see our clients in assist and advise stage right now, but we can already see in strategic bets, part of value chain being thought through how you could make them autonomous.
Got it. Great. I just want to tell the audience we're gonna come to you for questions in a few minutes, so get your questions ready. Sapna, you mentioned this white paper you have on security. I think as people move to more agentic systems, this is one of the big concerns, is it creates a lot more risk. How are you sort of working with customers at Google? How are you advising people to sort of manage those risks and manage the security of these agentic systems?
Yeah, I think this is the thing that's discussed, and I think in the back of people's minds most often. I think obviously we have to be thoughtful. It entails working with a lot of trusted testers, going slow, right? I think that's important for us to say, let's take a step back and make sure that we're doing this slowly and thoughtfully. But what this means, I think, through the learnings that we have is that there's a couple of threats, right? Like people are worried about things going rogue, right? I think that's one threat. And the other threat is around sensitive information being shared without the representing like the approvals, right? So I think ultimately where we can help the most is to make sure that, one, we have guidelines in this place, but also toolkits that can be deployed. I think in particular, there should be standards, right? Standards like email should not get access to financial systems, right? So you wouldn't want to have a system that can do this fully without a human in the loop, right? I think as Vivek was saying. I think the other place is, how can we be transparent? Today, when you're doing a transaction in a world that's not agentic, right, there's still steps where you're giving approval and you're also understanding what's happening. I think the same thing can be done today. If you're using any of our deep research tools, for example, it tells you, this is what I'm thinking of my process to be.
Right.
Right? These are the steps I'm going to take. Are you okay with that? Right? So I think we do have to stop and ask for user affirmation, and we have to build the necessary steps and processes to allow that. So I think there's a number of things that are happening in this space. The guidelines will be critical, and I think this is where also we say it's really important that we have regulation in this space, right? We shouldn't be afraid of it. It's too important to not regulate, and it's too important not to regulate well, right? So some of these things over time will become protocol, practices, and requirements that will need to be in place, and we're hoping that the work that we're doing will enable that.
Right. And at Google, are you working on offering a sort of orchestration layers for agents and permissioning layers? Because I think that's a lot of people sort of want there to be some platform on which they deploy these things that has that kind of built into it.
Right, so I think there's two things. One is the agent development toolkits that we have, which will enable that, so everyone doesn't need to, we don't need to replicate again and again. I think the other is agent-to-agent protocols. Right, I think that's another place that we're working. I think it's very important in a world of interoperability that these protocols exist to allow agents to connect with each other in a seamless way, but then also takes the standard of expectations of what you would expect from agents to be at a higher bar. Right. And I think with agent-to-agent protocol being established, that holds the entire ecosystem responsible, so it goes beyond just being tech on your own, but being an ecosystem opportunity.
Absolutely. Let's go to the audience for questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question. I'll call on you, we'll get a mic to you, and you can ask your question. And if no one has questions, I will carry on asking questions because I've got lots of them. So who has a question? Anyone? Anyone with a question? I'm not seeing any hands, so I'm going to carry on. Keep thinking. Oh, we've got one here. All right, brave man down in the front row. If we can get a mic down here, that would be great. If not, just stand up and why don't you just stand up and I'll repeat your question. Oh, here we go. If we can get a mic to this gentleman right in front, that would be great. Thank you. And if you could please tell us who you are and where you're from, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Rajnikant. The question is to Vivek, actually. Since I'm in healthcare and trying to develop the AI in healthcare, actually, any idea that you have that, what is that the future is going to be, actually?
Any idea? Could you repeat that, sorry?
Yeah, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I don't think we got it.
Any idea that, the present AI and the future AI?
Oh, yeah. So how do you sort of future-proof what you're building? I mean, there's one thing that's available today, but it's changing so quickly. How do you do that, particularly when it comes to agency?
I think that's a great question. And I can assure you, you're not the only one thinking through. So given it moves so fast, even within our own organization, we all every week tend to kind of learn every week as to what's the new thing now. What we are learning as we scale AI with clients, it becomes quite important to be able to decouple the AI solution with the models, because you can see how models are evolving, the pace at which they evolve. A lot of things move around there. The accuracy of these models also kind of moves. So one of the fundamental things which we have seen some businesses do better than others is when you think about AI solutions, how do you decouple the AI solution with the model? So that gives you a lot of ability to be able to be flexible. Second thing is, the clients who are doing well, I was referring to these front runners, about 8% of them out of those 2,000 companies, they tend to kind of have a little bit of a platform-based approach, which means, you can imagine, as Jeremy and Sapna alluded to, today there is the challenge which companies are facing is there is a proliferation of agents now, because you can see so many low-code, no-code platforms are available. It's not very difficult for someone to build an agent, actually. You can easily build an agent. But companies face a challenge as to how do you then drive outcomes which you want as business. For example, for you, it could be approval cycle times in your business, which is very important as a measure on how you service your customers. The challenge in that becomes is that to be able to unlock value, you need to be thinking end-to-end process orchestration. If you only take a small part and you unlock productivity in some of the activities, it is very difficult to be able to then translate that to an overall business outcome from the part of the value chain which you're trying to work on. So I wanted to say two things. One, how do you build the right kind of foundations so that you can build the right guardrails, so you can keep kind of learning, trying things. In the foundations, you need things like explainability. You want to know how these models work if you're using it for certain types of tasks and activities, right? So having the right foundations is very core to it, and then having architecture in a way that you can kind of make it a little bit more resilient, like decoupling the AI solution from the models would go a long way. Obviously, I think reskilling your own colleagues, workforce is quite important, because this is going to be the new way, right? We all got to learn how do we work with this new normal. Jeremy kind of mentioned human in the loop. We're already seeing in some areas human on the loop, which is agents working, and based on certain type of ways of working, you would kind of send stuff to agent and so on and so forth. So hopefully that kind of gives you some.
That's great. Other questions? Oh, now I've got lots of hands. Now there's lots of people asking. How about this lady right here in the middle? Yeah, go ahead. Please state your name and
Hi, this is Min Suk. Question to Accenture. Just curious on how advanced internally your Accenture employees are in the AI adoption, and I would imagine there's always a bit of a resistance in the beginning, understanding the tool and using it efficiently, effectively. What did you do to kind of boost up that adoption? What are the key things you did, and what are the things we should watch out for?
I think great question. So look, all of us are, first of all, we're all learning through this process, right? This is moving fast. So what we've done in Accenture, if you've been following a little bit of our CEO herself, there's been a very dedicated effort to train everyone to start adapting how we work with AI. So for example, we have things like our reinvention consoles, which is where all of Accenture can actually go and work with AI in whatever type of work they're doing. It becomes almost like a new workbench. What we have learned now over a period of time, working on ourselves and then working with clients, there are three parts to this whole thing. One, we're going to start with reimagining the work. It is important, like the gentleman mentioned about his organization, and you were thinking, what is going to be the future of the way you're going to do approvals in his business value chain, for example. So the first part of this thing is reimagining the work. Like I was talking about marketing, we were reimagining how do we do that. The second part to that is then in that reimagined environment, how would the workforce, what kind of skills are needed by the workforce? What parts, how would humans and machines kind of work together? So what are the skills needed? That's the second part. And like the third part is around having a workbench. We can do all these good things, but unless we're able to translate that into change in our standard operating procedures, how do we work every day, policies around it, none of this would result into anything material. So I think all those three parts are quite important. In Accenture, what we've been doing is we've been training all our colleagues on how to kind of start using AI in all parts of the work which we do, whether it's technology, consulting, operations, and so on and so forth. And then we've also done fairly structured curriculums which are persona-based. Every person's need is different. My need to learn and adopt AI doing my role is different from someone else who most probably needs to use it for doing something else, and so on and so forth. So I think persona-based curriculums, thinking through, for example, in Accenture, we have mapped all our AI teams around what we call the R12 skills. So everyone is mapped around ability to know what type of skills are needed for these roles, and then we have structured curriculums for them to be able to graduate to where we want our workforce to be.
Right. Stop now. Let me bring you in here too. Yeah. Within Google, how are you getting your employees
well, I was going to
for
say, I feel like it starts with yourself, right? So I think even one of our customers that we have together, Indosat Hutchinson, they used Agent Source to actually use for their entire employee systems themselves. So their own productivity, all of their employee HR processes, workflows, right? So their employees are having to touch it every day because it's just ingrained. And I think the same thing I would say exists at Google. A lot of people assume that, oh, we just all know it and we've been born with all of this information, which is not the truth. We've done hackathons, right, to help our teams come together to solve problems that we didn't think we could solve ourselves, and showing our teams what's possible is one thing. But I would also say that you need to get people comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And so are you rewarding behaviors which demonstrate, like we reward the people that are using AI the most, right, in their day-to-day, because that is the way the world is going, and so resistance isn't going to help.
And do you give people a chance to experiment, and maybe it doesn't work? I mean, I think I've had this experience. I've tried to build an AI agent, and it didn't work very well, at least at first. I could see, in some environments, that people might be afraid of that. They might be afraid of that failure. How do you make sure that your workforce can really, empower a workforce to experiment and to try things and not to be afraid to fail?
I think, it's a bit of our culture is like fail fast, right, and be open to discussing that. And I think like ultimately, I think people are surprised when they get their hands dirty how easy it is. And it's easier than it's ever been, right? So I think like failure is actually less of a concern. I think people are worried about how they show up, right? How much knowledge do they have, right? And so I think we're focused on making sure that we're educating and giving them access so that they have the confidence to actually go out there and do it.
Great. Yeah. Let's try to take one more question from the audience because I saw a lot of, oh gosh, a lot of hands. How about that gentleman there at the middle who's got his hand up? Yeah, just there because you're close to the mic too, which is useful. So please tell us who you are.
My name is Firoz. I am the CIO of a large multinational. So my question to you, Sapna, about the agent-to-agent protocol. And as a CIO representing the enterprise, I can tell you that this is fundamentally important for us. You know, we are looking to embark on the agentic architecture journey, and having the agents talk to each other is a fundamental strategy that we took. So when a few months ago the agent-to-agent protocol was published, I was very happy. Can you talk a little bit about what's the uptake that you see, especially on the tech provider side, that the underlying platforms have to enable the protocol, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think with everything that we've seen in this region, we've actually been surprised with the take up on anything that we've seen. I think this region, in particular, Southeast Asia, the pragmatism, the opportunity, and almost like the nimbleness that exists that we see. I mean, some people might not agree. I would love to have a debate afterwards, but we see that adoption being faster than we have expected. I mean, it's going to be key, especially if I look at Southeast Asia. Right, interoperability is the name of the game, and so the opportunity to solve larger problems has never been greater, and also we've never had the answer in front of us. So I think I see governments talking about this. I see the ecosystem adopting faster than I've expected, but I don't have any data to share. Maybe Vivek does.
I could complement Sapna what you're saying. So Feroz, for example, if you see when we spoke about end-to-end process orchestration, the heart of that is how do you orchestrate agents across platforms? Because invariably, when you look at an end-to-end process, let's say something like lead to cash, right? That cuts across at least 5-6 platforms in a company. So when you're thinking about how agents work, it's a combination, or maybe it starts with something at the Salesforce. It has something, right? You could kind of imagine from there it is actually going into your core transaction processing system, and still you're not able to stitch it because 30-35% of the work happens outside the systems. So what we have very quickly learned is, I don't know if you've been following, but Accenture did launch something called Trusted Agent Huddle, which was largely a way on how you could orchestrate, because a lot of our clients don't want to kind of have only one platform on which they can do this. So how do you actually make the right way to orchestrate across different types of agents? I would encourage you to have a look at Accenture.com, have a look at what we are finding. But very important, one of the biggest challenges, how do you monetize? How do you actually get value out of AI? That's the biggest challenge we're seeing. For that, you need to end-to-end orchestrate a process. For that, you most probably need to think about multiple platform agentic solutions. Very important.
Interesting. Sapna, I wanted to ask you a question about sort of what's coming next. Obviously, Google, you have Google DeepMind is doing a lot of the fundamental research in this area, and you're now moving things very quickly from research into product. What's really coming down the pike? Can you give us a preview of what we might expect next? You mentioned some of the Project Astra capabilities, which are sort of here now. Some of those in Gemini. What could we expect maybe if we came back in 6 months to see?
Yeah, no, I think it's an exciting time. I mean, obviously, so I would say to everyone, if you haven't seen what's coming with Astra, look at it. I think people are like, oh, that's 5 years from now. I'm like, no, this is happening today. And I think you see some of that in Gemini Live, which actually some of the capabilities actually have been enhanced as we speak this week, right? Are you having I was in Vietnam last week and I took my phone up. I asked about some signs that I didn't understand. I had a conversation. It was telling me that it was related to some political elections that were coming up. I asked it a question. And so you can actually try these capabilities today. I think the other thing that we're seeing is search. Obviously, search is becoming more evolved, right? Search used to be very task-oriented. You search for something, you get a link or a set of links, and you're on a quest yourself to answer things. But now, with agentic behaviors, right, you can see things moving and evolving. We have something called Project Mariner, which is within our Chrome ecosystem. Think about you want to book a flight. Now, usually you would have like 10 things that you would want to research and look at. What if you could just prompt and actually lead it to your transaction, and it does everything for you? But you still get that. I think the important thing is you still have the user in control who says, yes, I want to purchase this at the end. So I think you'll see evolution on search, on Chrome, on of course, obviously, Gemini and all of the chat-based products as well.
Yeah, interesting. And I know some of your competitors have announced, an agent-specific products or an AI native browser. But it sounds like, we're going to start to see at least some changes in maybe how Chrome works to make it more have more AI features. We're going to see sort of an enhancement of AI features throughout a lot of the Google ecosystem.
Yeah, I think people are surprised how fast, again, that this is moving and how you can test a lot of these things already, such as shopping on search, right? Today, you can actually set it up to look for something that you're looking for, set up an agent. It will tell you when it's available or when it's ready, and then based on the price that you want, right? Like today, you sit and you keep going back to your platform of choice to look for a product at a certain price. What if you tell your browser to do it for you and come back to you when it's
And that's obviously a big challenge to business models too, Vivek. That's
for sure. I mean, we're seeing so much happening in terms of how some of the leaders are trying to use some of these opportunities to service segments which they've not been able to service in the past. That's the beauty of the technology which we are, we have the chance to work with. And, with the media house, for example, Accenture worked where a new product line is created because earlier we could not cover certain types of sports given the size of the audience and everything else. There are a lot of examples around.
Fantastic. We're out of time, but thank you very much for listening, and thank you for my panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.